Funding for the Hinckley Report is made possible in part by the Cleone Peterson Eccles Endowment Fund.
Tonight on the Hinckley Report, a resolution on Bears Ears may have significant repercussions for the state. What is the fate of the outdoor retailer show? How have our elected officials reacted?
The people of San Juan County want to preserve the natural beauty and conserve the ecosystem of Bears Ears more than anyone. But they want to do so in a way that protects and promotes economic opportunity within their county.
The debate heats up on an array of legislative issues. What bills may pass and which ones may face defeat? Betsy DeVos is confirmed by the thinnest of margins. What do Utahns think about the newest head of education? How are the other Trump confirmation debates going? States continue to grapple with Trump's executive order on immigration.
We will not go down this road. We are standing united, and we will stay united.
Will the judicial battles affect Utah? And what does this mean for the future of the state's population? Good evening, and welcome to the Hinckley Report. I am Jason Perry, Director of the Hinckley Institute of Politics. Covering the week, we have LeVar Webb, publisher of UtahPolicy.com, Teresa Foxley, CEO of the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, and Terry Gilday, News Director for KUER 90.1. So glad to have you all with us today. Lots of events in Washington, D.C. are impacting the state of Utah, and we have been talking about Bears Ears. Ever since President Obama made the designation here in the state of Utah, we've been having a mixed bag in this state. But our legislature got involved. Terry, let's start with you a little bit. Concurrent resolution passed this week. Talk to us about what that is and the significance of the sponsors.
Yes, the governor signed a resolution. First of all, a resolution is a non-binding piece of legislation that really is a political statement in lots of ways. This is the legislature. They don't have control over what happens over federal lands, and they're making their opinions known about how they feel about that. This resolution that was signed by the governor asks President Trump to rescind the Bears Ears National Monument that was designated by President Obama in the final days of his administration. So this is a really significant piece of legislation, also because it was sponsored by House Speaker Greg Hughes and President Wayne Niederhauser of the Senate. Those individuals don't necessarily sponsor legislation very often. Their job is to be basically a traffic light in their chamber that they cover to make sure that legislation moves through the House or the Senate. So very unusual, Jason. And these were fast-tracked through the legislature, this resolution. There's another resolution that passed the Senate this week that asks Congress to alter or shrink the Grand Staircase Escalante Monument that was designated by President Clinton over 20 years ago. So these are really powerful statements that the Utah legislature is putting forth. And we're getting some reaction from the outdoor industry this week. The Outdoor Industry Association has threatened to take the Outdoor Retailers Show out of Salt Lake, which it's a twice-yearly show. It's a large trade show that brings millions of dollars into our local economy. And they've threatened to take that show out of Salt Lake based on the way that the state legislature is reacting to these federal lands.
Well, let's explore that for just a moment. And Teresa, let's jump in right here. You ran a big program at the Governor's Office of Economic Development. You helped recruit the companies in this space. Talk about the significance of, I guess we have Patagonia, Arc'teryx, and also even Peter Metcalf with Black Diamond saying they're very concerned, two of them pulling out of the show.
Yeah, this is a big deal, Jason. The Outdoor Retailers Show brings in, it's a huge shot in the arm to the local economy, about $45 million in economic activity annually, which, to put that into perspective, is about half of what Sundance brings into the state. But moreover, it's a calling card for Utah when we're out recruiting companies who are in the outdoor recreation space. We're known for being a great home for outdoor retailers and therefore for outdoor recreation as well. And so this is a huge issue that we've got to solve. Hopefully cool heads will prevail. Appreciate that the governor wants to sit down with both the show sponsors, Emerald Expositions, and the Outdoor Industry Association to try and sort through this issue that has really come to a boiling point over the last.
Go ahead, LeVar.
So I think the outdoor retailers and Patagonia and Peter Metcalf have overreacted to this issue. They're trying to paint it as black and white, yes or no, and there's a lot more nuance to that. I was not a supporter of President Obama's designation for the national monument, but I do support protecting Bears Ears, and I think our congressional delegation, our legislature, and our governor also support protecting Bears Ears. There are other ways to do it with a smaller monument designation and other things as well. So I do think this is an overreaction, and I think if outdoor retailers leave, it won't just be because of that. It will have to do with convention space and other things as well.
Well, let's add to this a little bit, Teresa, because the history is important here, right? So we have the Bears Ears as sort of a big issue right now that they're discussing, but this is a discussion that outdoor retailers has had for a while, right? It seems to come up again and again.
Yeah, every time that there's a contract renewal, it seems like we find ourselves in a little bit of a tug of war with the show sponsors. There's a lot of other locations that would love to have this show there.
Well, Colorado's already making a play, right?
Yep, and Hickenlooper's got a pretty big budget to be able to bring them over there, and so we've done a lot to try to accommodate the show, try to make the show feel welcome here. We've benefited from it. We think it's a mutually beneficial relationship. We're working on addressing some of the hotel space issues that will hopefully be more attractive for to have more participants be able to display their wares but it is an interesting scenario, and one that I think LeVar hits the nail on the head, that it's not black and white, it's pretty nuanced.
And for them to argue that Utah does not care about public lands or wants to build a McDonald's in national parks is just not true. And I think Patagonia is having a juvenile temper tantrum.
Well, let's talk about the reaction of our elected officials for just a moment, because in the past, sometimes you have seen them just really try to go overboard to kind of make sure everyone feels comfortable about being here and try to kind of make an accounting with the things LeVar just talked about. But we've had the Speaker of the House saying if they go somewhere else, it's no sweat off my nose. The governor is saying this is a political ploy. He's gone that far. And Paul Edwards, who's speaking on behalf of the governor, said it's going to be really hard for them to find another place like this. So this seems to be pushing back a little bit, right? Terry, explain that.
I think we're in our stand our ground phase, right? Everyone's sort of puffing themselves up and talking about what's really important to them. I think Teresa's right. When the rubber meets the road here, the governor's going to sit down with these individuals and trying to find a path for them to stay here. We're talking about millions of dollars in our economy. I think that the legislature and the Utah congressional delegation and the governor are all trying to be as unified on this issue as possible to send a very direct signal to Congress. The Utah congressional delegation wanted these resolutions passed out of the Utah legislature as quick as possible to get them up to Capitol Hill in D.C. so that Jason Chaffetz, Chris Stewart, Mia Love, other members of the delegation can go to their counterparts in Congress and to the Trump administration and say, this is important to Utah. So we're still, I think, in the playing politics phase.
LeVar, looks like you had something.
I don't think we will eliminate protections from Bears Ears or other public lands. I think our congressional delegation, our governor, are committed to public lands. Utah's a public land state. It's a wonderful blessing to have those public lands. So we will have protections. It's a matter of how much. Utah's economy is very, very strong. We're among tops in the country thanks to Teresa and her good work and so forth. Even if they did leave, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It would be unfortunate if they left. There's no question about that.
One last comment on this to you, Teresa, since you helped kind of oversee the office that promotes the state of Utah as well. This is an outdoor products kind of state,
yes,
where people know that our resources are so important. Is there any reputational harm to the state from this sort of standoff we're having right now?
Well, certainly we've benefited from having from having a lot of public lands in the state. We're known as a recreation hub. We use that as a way to attract talent and companies into the state. So we're watching it very closely to make sure that things stay on track.
Okay, we're going to switch gears just a little bit too. This has been an interesting week in terms of some confirmations. Utah always has an interesting approach to education as it relates to the federal government. And the new Secretary of Education, Secretary DeVos, has now been confirmed by really the thinnest of margins, right? The first time in history we had a nominee where the vice president had to break the tie and actually put her in place. But the very same day we have our Congressman Chaffetz introduce a bill to abolish the department. LeVar, talk about this relationship that we have in Utah with that federal agency.
Betsy DeVos obviously has made her name really supporting vouchers and using public funding so that students can go to whatever school they choose. Utah has actually rejected vouchers, but we do have a very strong charter school movement, which I think is a positive thing. So I do not know how well she will perform as Secretary of Education. You know, I don't think the Department of Education will be abolished, mainly because it does provide a lot of money for local education, for public schools, and Jason Chaffetz would like to say, well, we'll take that money and we'll give it to the schools. But the federal deficit is so large that I think if they abolish the Department of Education, that money isn't going to come back to states. It's going to be used elsewhere in the federal government.
Terry, tell us about that.
Well, I just want to interject. Another really important thing that the Department of Education provides is it gives money into the federal student loan program, Pell Grants. You can borrow money from the federal government as a college student at a low fixed rate at this time. If you're going to a school that requires more money, that you can't, there's a limit on how much you can borrow from the Department of Education. You have to go to a private lender. Abolishing the Department of Education, among other things, would abolish that student loan program, and individuals would have to go to private lenders at variable interest rates and other kinds of things. And we have an enormous amount of student debt in our country. It's one of the economic issues that we don't talk about very much. And I think at some point we're going to have an economic fallout like we have with the housing crisis. We'll have it with education debt, because we have individuals going into the workforce with 5-6 figures of debt without a job and not able to buy a house or a car. And so the Department of Education provides that service, and if it's gone, that's one of the services that will be gone.
Okay, so go ahead, LeVar, please.
Well, in general, I am supportive of reducing the size of the federal government and moving prerogatives back to the state level, as long as it does come with the funding. I mean, I think the states could even handle student loans and so forth. The problem is that money isn't going to come back to the states because it'll be sucked up in other federal programs.
So Congressman Chaffetz surely understands these particular points. So what do you think is at the heart of this bill?
I think it's really a political statement to say to individuals, we want more local and state control of education. I think that the federal government has had a reputation for handling education in poor ways ever since President Bush's No Child Left Behind legislation that tried to rate schools and rate performing schools that performed well and schools that were failing. It's one of the first times that the federal government got its foray into trying to manipulate public education in some way, shape, or form. Utah has a history of wanting local and state control of education, and this is Congressman Chaffetz saying that's what we want.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's what Utahns want?
Overall, I see that. I mean, as LeVar was saying, we have a charter school program that's flourishing, and there are people that want more choice in where they send their children. We have a large homeschool movement in the state. A lot of people integrate their religious and other philosophies into the education of their children. So they're very particular about how they want their children educated. The more freedom they have, I think, the happier they'll be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if that's a theme of this week, it is local control. We don't want the federal government telling us how to educate our kids. We don't want them telling us how to manage our lands. So I think there's really a groundswell around that amongst our local political leaders.
Mm-hmm. Do you think these demonstrations that we're seeing around the country on some of these nominees, or even on Betsy DeVos, is having an impact on our elected officials?
I don't think it is with Trump. I think we've seen how he operates, and he will go forward no matter what. It may actually be hurting the Democratic Party if the typical Americans that voted for Trump are seeing these demonstrations. In some cases, they're seeing violence and rioting. If that's the new face of the Democratic Party, if it's Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, over the long run, that may actually help Republicans and hurt the Democrats.
I think you're right, LeVar. And in fact, even Charlie Luke was quoted in the Trib this morning as saying the protesters that showed up to Chaffetz's town hall last night probably ensured that he'll be reelected next time he runs.
Do you think that's true? You watched that, right, Terry? That town hall?
I did.
That was something else.
It was something else, and I think, actually Salt Lake County Republicans sent out a letter to registered Republicans asking them to show up, knowing that there would be that much protest from the other side. And so it's interesting to see how this is interpreted both in our local media and in the national media. I think in the national media, individuals are saying there's this progressive upswell in Utah. I mean, the local media were saying maybe this is going to make sure that Jason Chaffetz is elected to Congress for another term. So it's interesting to see how these kinds of things will be interpreted.
I certainly don't think that. I mean, that was almost a mob in some ways, and it didn't hurt Chaffetz. It was certainly uncomfortable for him to stand up there and take all the abuse, but he is reelected by enormous margins. This will really probably only help him in the long run.
I guess
it's hard to tell too how many of those individuals in that hall who were yelling and screaming are actually registered voters in the 3rd Congressional District.
And the question for the Democrats is, can they turn all this anger into electoral success? And this is happening all over the country. People are very, very upset about Donald Trump. The Democrats are hoping that this sort of turns into the liberal Tea Party uprising, because the Republicans did this with the Tea Party, and they did turn it into success at the ballot box.
It did translate.
That's right. Can the Democrats do that? That's the question.
Democrats haven't historically been able to organize as well, but there's so many new tools now, and if that momentum does continue, it will be really interesting to see. I personally have been really surprised by the number of friends and colleagues who have historically not been involved in the political process are really grasping onto some of this grassroots opposition to Trump and some of his policies.
It's so interesting to watch. Having worked with elected officials, it used to be in the old days you would have a town hall and you'd hope people would show up. Right? People are showing up now, that is for sure, which I guess is a good sign as well if people are engaged in some way. I want to turn to an issue where Utah has been very much engaged as well. Yesterday, the Ninth Circuit refused to lift the stay on the travel ban and the restrictions on people coming to the United States, having a direct impact on the state of Utah. Some of our officials in the state have started to opine about that. So let's talk about what the actual impacts are. Teresa, let's start with you for just a moment, because this ban has an impact. We'll talk about the people without question, but also our leaders started to talk about trade and about our ability to get products out. Talk about how that's going to do.
We're a trading state. We're one of the few states in the country that has a trade surplus. Our exports have grown year over year, which is really tremendous, and our exporting companies are growing, not from tech and all sorts of other industries throughout the state. If trade shuts down, Utah is one of the states that really is negatively impacted by that. And so I think you're right to see Derek Miller and Lane Beatty ask the federal government and ask our delegation to try and stem that tide. Further to the refugee moratorium and the travel ban. You've got our tech communities really joined with other Silicon Valley tech communities to say, look, this is impacting our business, and furthermore, it's contrary to our ethics and to our ethos as companies and innovators. And so, I think you're going to see continued resistance to.
Well, it's like you mentioned something. It's like 97 tech companies have come out over that now. Some of the names we know, Google and Apple, they've come out saying it's directly impacting their business, which has an impact on us. Go ahead, LeVar.
Yeah, I thought the travel ban was unfortunate, again, because it doesn't take into account the nuances of this issue. We do need comprehensive immigration reform, but Trump took a very blunt instrument in his approach. I don't think, some people are accusing him of religious bigotry, and I don't think it was that, because he didn't ban Muslims. He banned travel from these 7 countries. They are Muslim majority, but there are other Muslim majority countries with much bigger Muslim populations that he did not ban. But I do think that it was unfortunate. It was not rolled out well at all. They didn't take a lot of thought to it. It was very, very clumsy the way this whole thing happened.
It was naive, I think. And I think Trump's advisors did not serve him well. And I think where we haven't seen Trump where he seems to have a pretty thick skin about criticism, I think this one's actually getting to him.
Let's talk about one of the tweets. And Terry, if you don't mind, take this for a second, because the court heard the arguments on this, and at some point, Donald Trump, if you can read into kind of his tweet, he said this was about national security, and that maybe this was not even an issue that should have been reviewed by the courts. This is something that is within his purview by the Constitution if there is a threat. Please discuss that particular angle.
Well, he's really trying to put on the mantle of commander-in-chief and make sure that he's taking responsibility for what he believes to be national security issues. That's an argument that the Ninth Circuit rejected. And also, he questioned whether judges, federal or otherwise, should even be questioning his authority as an executive. And the judiciary did not take kindly to that. Neil Gorsuch, his Supreme Court nominee, was reported to say to two senators, a Republican and a Democrat, when he was on the Hill making his ceremonial meetings with and greetings with senators in the U.S. Senate, that he was appalled by President Trump's questioning of the judiciary, called it demoralizing, evidently. And so, and that is also another difficult political card for Donald Trump to swallow.
Yeah, Trump should not make political or personal attacks against federal judges. He needs to recognize that that's a different co-equal branch of government. However, we need to remember that you recall President Obama's famous State of the Union speech, where he criticized the Supreme Court, and they were all sitting right there in front of him. And a lot of people criticized him for that as well. So it's not just Trump that has done this sort of thing.
We're certainly seeing a lot of the separation of powers in the branches of government come to play, even with judges that are appointed politically initially, not really bending. This is so interesting. One last thought on this, LeVar, if you don't mind. You're an expert on polling and interpreting the data too. 55% of Utahns, and this is a Hinckley Tribune poll, said that they don't support this Muslim ban. How do these elected officials who are kind of taking that position going to kind of walk that tightrope?
Well, I think the Utah congressional delegation and Utah leaders will say they support proper immigration policies. Some of them are saying they support Trump's recent actions. I don't think that it will hurt them in the polls. 55% is an overwhelming number. I don't think it will hurt them in their next elections.
Okay. And we have a little while until that occurs anyway.
That's right.
Okay, let's get to a local issue with our legislature that is kind of the talk of the week too, is the issue of guns. Utah has some kind of very progressive sorts of ways to look at guns and your ability to carry guns, but we have this.
Did you just say progressive?
Yeah, as in we allow. How about that? Thank you for that. And that we're just very, very permissive, I should say. Permissive, yeah. I should have said. So it's very permissive in that. But this bill right here by Lee Perry, says that you could have a concealed weapon without a concealed weapon permit. And that is something that we're discussing this week. LeVar, you followed this issue a little bit over the years. Where is this going to go? Governor vetoed it last time.
Yeah. So I own some guns and I enjoy shooting, but I just don't see the need. I don't have a concealed carry permit. Haven't seen the need to get one of those, but I don't see the need to be able to carry concealed weapons without a permit. I mean, we do require driver's licenses and so forth, and we allow open carry, so someone can carry openly so people can see it. So like the governor says, you know, what's broken here? Why do we need to do this? I don't know what the governor's going to do on this. There does seem to be a fair head of steam for this legislation in the legislature, and part of it will depend on how big of margins they pass it by, whether he vetoes it or not.
What if you had a sweetener to it, though? And the sweetener in this one of these particular bills is that you restrict anyone who's convicted of a domestic violence charge, and so you would restrict them in that way. Does it change the analysis?
That does give the governor some cover, should he choose not to veto it.
It's always struck me as odd, though, that it's a privilege to conceal a weapon, yet you can walk around with an open carry that seems more terrifying to most people in a civilized society. I think this is a thorny one for the governor. Would love to just see. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I think it's important with the concealed carry program. You know, the governor called it a common sense rule last time when he was presented with a bill that he vetoed that would do away with permits. I think it's important to make sure that individuals know how to use firearms safely, can qualify in a weapon, those kinds of things. And the permit program allows that. And I think that I don't see the argument for why it should be taken away, and it'll be interesting to see if the governor does take that sweetener. I think a rule to restrict individuals who have a history of domestic violence from having access to weapons or being able to get a permit and conceal a weapon, I think that's a common sense rule. But it depends on how we see the politics of this. It's interesting. I lived in Texas for about 5 years, where the gun culture is not as it's more restrictive than Utah, believe it or not. There is no. I believe they just passed concealed carry or open carry on college campuses, which we've had here in Utah for many, many years. But the gun culture in Texas people talk about it more. It seems to be more of a thing. Here in Utah, it seems to be a little bit under the surface. Individuals are very protective of their Second Amendment rights, but we don't seem to have issues of gun violence that we might have in other states. So it's a delicate balance. It'll be interesting to see how the governor reacts to this if it's passed.
I did take my concealed carry. I had a permit. I let it lapse, but there isn't a lot of education that goes into actually getting your concealed permit. When I asked my instructor about firing a warning shot, he said, "Yeah, I believe in that, straight to the head." So
there's your warning.
Yeah.
Symbolically, this is a really important issue for conservatives, and so it's very difficult for Republicans to ever vote against any kind of law that will open gun more, so that you can carry and so forth more openly. So it's a tough issue for Republican legislators.
So you've seen it for a while, LeVar. Can you give us a prediction then? Does the legislature pass it and the governor vetoes it, or do they resolve this thing in the back room?
I think the legislature passes it, and I don't know if the governor will veto it. Again, I think the sweetener gives him a little bit of cover on that.
So we have only a couple of seconds left, so I want to get to some efforts to impact voting in the state of Utah. A couple of bills with signature gatherers, and put that in context with the Republicans meeting this week. LeVar, can you take just a second, talk about what's happening there?
Well, legislators do not like the public to be able to have the ability to make laws. And so Utah does have an initiative process, so that if you gather a certain required number of signatures, you can put something on the ballot for the citizens to vote on. And so the legislature has historically tried to make that more and more difficult, and they're trying to do some of that in this session as well.
LeVar, is that in response to SB 54? Is that in response to Our Schools Now, or is it just a whole combination of things?
Yes, it's both, but particularly Our Schools Now.
I'm so sad. That's going to have to be the last comment on that one, but I know we're going to hear more about it in the final weeks of the legislative session. Thank you so much for your comments today. That's it for the Hinckley Report. The conversation continues online at kued.org/Hinckley Report. We'll see you next week. Good night.